Good afternoon, MACPA members. I am Rebecca Brown. I'm your Director of Development here at the MACPA. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon edition of our monthly member town halls. We wanted to switch up the time and the day of the week a little bit to see if we could capture some other people. I know that you might have kids that you got to get to school in the mornings and things like that, and you might miss out on some of these town halls. So we're trying to switch up the time and date to make sure that all of our members can really take advantage of these great monthly updates. I've already opened up the polls. Bill, if you want to switch to the next slide. We start our meetings every month with a positive focus. We actually start every meeting at the MACPA internally and every CPE session that I teach with a positive focus because it helps our brains, right? It's that energy that we need, especially at that 3 o'clock slump when you're probably reaching for some coffee or chocolate or something like that. So the question we wanted to ask is, we want you to share something that you want to celebrate. So looks like somebody's putting in a new garden. Congratulations. Although I did get a Amazon Alexa alert today that there was a freeze warning, at least in my county. So watch out for that. Someone's recovering from COVID and starting to think I'm going to make it. Well, we are very glad about that. I'm hearing a lot more cases coming back, but hearing, much less severe symptoms. So that's good. Someone's birthday today. Happy birthday, Spring. Somebody got a husky puppy. Oh my gosh, they are beautiful dogs. Upcoming vacation in Jamaica. Yeah, just the sunshine, 6 months cancer-free. Wow, that's amazing. See, there's so much good to celebrate. And sometimes we just so easily focus on the hard things, right? So if nothing else, I hope this kind of just even reading other people's thoughts or being forced to kind of think about what you want to celebrate helps to pick you up at the end of the day. We have other polls open about where you work, what your position is at work. So we're kind of getting an idea of the demographics of our town hall audience today, your level of experience. And then you'll notice there's 2 questions. We've started to ask this a little more frequently. We're hearing from some members, especially right post that April 18th deadline, that are kind of on opposite sides of this. We want this to move, or it wouldn't help if it moved. It would just make it worse. So we're just going to keep a pulse on these questions. Obviously, we know that, and maybe you don't know, about half of our members are in business and industry, corporate, government, not-for-profit, and half of our members are in public accounting. Of course, then that is split between consulting, auditing, outsource CFO, and tax. So it's not all of our members, but we want to ask this because, of course, it is very important to our profession. So if you don't have an opinion, you can say that, but we would love your insights on that. And then future town hall topic ideas. If you have an idea, we'd love to hear from that. So I'm just going to quickly look at the demographics of our audience today. And we had a suggestion, I think, last time that we needed to add law firms. So I did add that for this one. But right now, it looks like actually private company might be the largest group. Lots of private company people, sole practitioners, 15%, and then the smaller firm, fewer than 25, 13%. Maybe if we added up all those folks as public accounting, they would definitely go past that private company. But a good mix here today. And then I'll go back and look. Positioner levels still have a pretty seasoned, influential group here. Senior manager and C-suite being, and middle management being kind of those top groups. With that, and 52% of our, 52% of our attendees have been in the profession 30+ years. So we got to ask you, please bring along your colleagues. We need to pass along some of this knowledge to the next generation of leaders as well. But I asked that question, that first positive focus question about what you want to celebrate, as kind of an intro to this slide. I want to talk to you about an event on May 24th. Oops, one back. there we go, on May 24th. It's going to be immediately following our business and industry conference. So if you're attending that, or if you're interested in attending that, go check out the agenda, some really great topics and speakers at that. It's going to be at the Maryland Live Hotel and Casino. We'll also be webcasting it, but this is our first ever fundraising event for the MACPA Foundation. The MACPA Foundation was founded probably in the 80s at some point when we made that 150-hour rule and needed scholarships for students. It's always done scholarships, but in the last 2 years, we've really expanded its purpose. We've seen the need for both diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in our profession, as well as just recruiting to the profession at all levels. So even just this week, yesterday, I had a great conversation with a community college and with a school district about high school and middle school activities that we can get involved in. So we're going to have this celebrate this profession event on May 24th. We'd love for you to get together with us in person to celebrate the last 2 years of recognitions from our members. Lots of our members have won awards, been nominated for important boards and things like that. And we haven't really been able to celebrate in person. And so this will be our opportunity to get together to celebrate our wonderful profession and to raise funds to continue that wonderful profession and to invest in our future leaders. Anoop Mehta will actually be becoming chair of AICPA just the week before on May 17th. So we'll certainly be highlighting that as well, and very proud of past MACPA chair now taking that national and global seat. With that, I'll just go to the next slide, which is our board of directors, and just say again, thank you. We are so blessed as an organization and as a profession to have these wonderful people leading us. And with that, the next is our leadership team, and we can just skip by that because you know all of us. And again, it's because of our members, because of this, our member promise. So we debuted this, I believe it was last year at our annual meeting in June. And we really needed to refocus as an organization coming out of the pandemic, which of course we're still sort of in, but as we thought about what we really do for members, and we went through some organizational changes, of course, what are we really promising our members? What do we want to make sure that we deliver on constantly? How should we be focused on and building strategic initiatives? And that's around community. It's around advocacy, which of course we're going to focus on today, resources and professional development. And so with that, I want to hand it over to Bill to talk a little bit about some of those resources.
Yeah, so thanks, Rebecca. And these, of course, are our preferred providers. We kind of highlight these folks every town hall that we get together for. And of course, we like to think that these people as not sponsors, but really partners, right? These relationships truly are partnerships. They're doing things that we think can help you all become a little bit more future ready, to thrive in kind of this ever-changing world. And help is really the key word here. They truly want to help. So please reach out to them, find out more about what they can do and how they can help. You'll also find out more about all our preferred providers on our website at macpa.org. Help, that keyword there, by the way, helping us bring today's town hall meeting to you are our friends at SafeSend, actually a wonderful partner of the MACPA's for many years. And with us today for a brief introduction and overview is Joe Wroblewski. Joe is a senior product enthusiast. I love that title for SafeSend Returns. And Joe, glad to have you here. Please take it away.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Rebecca, everyone at MACPA. I appreciate it. Just real quick, just to kind of go over a little bit about what we do at SafeSend with our SafeSend suite. This SafeSend suite is an automated workflow software that allows tax and accounting firms to streamline their entire tax engagement lifecycle. What exactly does that mean for your firm and for your clients? Well, for firms, SafeSend suite allows you to go completely paperless for engagement letters, organizers, e-signing 8879s, automating tax return package assembly and delivery, including K1s, invoicing, and extensions. The benefit is is really just a more precise, dependable, and efficient process that eliminates staff distress and irritation while saving about $40 per return in internal labor and hard costs. For your clients, SafeSend Suite provides an easy to navigate, paperless, one-touch experience for clients receiving electronic engagement letters, organizers, gathering necessary source documents, electronically signing 8879, reviewing and completing tax packages and extensions, receiving and distributing K1s, paying invoices, and managing estimated payments. SafeSend Suite ends client frustration and exasperation, increases return times, and eliminates paper from the taxpayer experience, all while being the simplest collaboration experience in the industry for taxpayers. When you have a moment, please visit our website, schedule a demonstration so we can go over with you how SafeSend Suite can be a fit with your firm. Just going to talk in more detail about it with you. And thank you very much, Bill. Thank you, Rebecca, everyone at MACPA. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks to all the folks at SafeSend for their partnerships. And you can learn more about all of our preferred providers, folks, in one spot. We've created what we call our showcase page, where you'll find short demos from all of our providers describing how they can help you, your clients and customers, the resources they offer, the solutions that they are making available to you. You'll find all that at macpa.org/showcase. So be sure to visit our partners there as well. Let's get down to business, right? Why we're all here. Maryland's General Assembly wrapped up, I believe it was its 444th legislative session on April 12th, and even 2,500 bills were introduced over 90 days, 1,487 in the House, 1,013 in the Senate. A number of them impact our profession directly. We wanted to spend some time today talking a little bit about what happened in Annapolis that we need to know about, what's going to happen, what has happened in the past, what's going to happen coming up very shortly in the near future, because the rest of the year is going to be pretty interesting as well, being an election year. All of this points, I think, to the importance of the MACPA's Political Action Committee. We couldn't do what we do in Annapolis without your contributions to our PAC. Through contributions from members like you, the PAC is able to work toward favorable outcomes on legislative issues that affect Maryland CPAs. We're working to educate legislators about matters that are important to our profession, which is critically important right now because there's been so much turnover, right, in terms of leadership in the General Assembly. More to come, obviously, in this fall's elections. And of course, we're working hard to keep all MACPA members informed about what's going on down in there in Annapolis. So next up, I want to introduce you to a gentleman by the name of Jeff Rosen. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the importance of the PAC. Jeff is managing partner of RSNF and a member of the MACPA's Legislative Executive Committee, and he's going to share with us some of his thoughts about why member support of the PAC is so crucial. So Jeff, if you're there, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. And that's a great segue into what my brief comments, but it's good to see, see you virtually, see everybody. And I just want to take a few minutes and explain why I support the PAC and a little bit about what the PAC does, and just give you some more highlights there. So the PAC does, as Bill said, have an extremely important role. So the first thing that the MACPA does generally, and the PAC specifically supports, is addressing issues that are facing us, that are facing CPAs in our profession, and also, by the way, that are impacting our clients, which is also extremely important, who of course are taxpayers in the state of Maryland. Another thing that we do is we educate legislators. So I thought some of those numbers that Bill mentioned were staggering. There's a lot that happens over a very brief 3-month period during the assembly, and it's incumbent on us to educate legislators, many of whom are very well intentioned, but in some cases may not be as informed as they may need to be, and that is really our role. It's the role of the PAC. And then finally, it's important that the MACPA and our PAC keep MACPA members, all of you, informed about what's happening down in Annapolis, as well as what's happening at the national level. And this is very important while the respective legislative bodies are in session. So how does the MACPA do it, and how does our PAC do this? Well, certainly, as Bill mentioned, we do have a volunteer committee, but really where the work gets done and where the majority of the work gets done is by our professionals, our outstanding professionals who work for the MACPA and specifically for the PAC. That's how this gets done. They do a lot of research. There's a lot of nuance to a lot of the bills that are put forward at any level. So there's a lot of research that has to happen and a lot of information that has to be gathered. So that's one way we do this. There's a lot of relationship building. It's with relationship building with the legislators, especially as turnover occurs. It's with other industry associations where our interests may be aligned with them. And of course, it's relationship building with our members as well. And then the other how we do this is the MACPA then mobilizes our members in Maryland. And a lot of this is really grassroots because it happens at the very local level and people's relationships with legislators and so forth. So that's the how of how the MACPA does this and how the PAC supports it. On this next slide, the next slide there.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Let me get to where we are.
No problem.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, so as you can see on the left side are some of the legislation that was supported or opposed in the most recent session, and where we were successful. Certainly, proper funding for the comptroller's office, amendments to and the fix to the new sales tax on digital products, which really impacts many Marylanders in the state and many of our clients. And of course, we're always fighting against sales tax on professional services and looking at risk management. But if you look at the graph on the right, as you can see, compared to other service industries, we are just not raising enough. Our PAC is not raising enough, but the work we're doing is extremely important. And quite frankly, it's just simply inadequate. So I haven't asked for you, and if we can go to the next slide, and I'll preface this by saying I generally don't like asking for money, but I do so and feel very comfortable doing it when I believe in the cause, and I think this is an extremely important cause. So my ask is that everyone on this call today, this webinar today, please support the MACPA PAC in any amount that you see fit. It could be $20, $50, $100, $1,000, whatever you feel comfortable with. But the work that we're doing, that the PAC is doing, is extremely important. So I ask you to do it because the PAC is supporting or opposing legislation that impacts our profession directly, as well as helps the citizens of the state of Maryland who are our clients. I ask you to do it so that we can have a seat at the table when we need a seat at the table, which is often. And I ask you to do this so that the MACPA can remain effective and vigilant at all times. So again, here are very easy ways to contribute. So you can take out your phone and look at the QR code, you can text, you can go to the respective websites, but please support the MACPA's PAC in any way you can. And I do appreciate your consideration, and thank you, Bill, for the time.
Jeff, thank you. Much appreciated having you here and telling us a little bit more about that. And folks, you know, there's almost 500 of you here today. If everyone just gave a little bit today, man, what a difference that would make. So please consider that. It will make a huge difference in how we represent and protect this profession in Annapolis and beyond. So thanks for that. That brings us to our next guest today. He is Nick Manis. Nick is managing partner at Manis Canning and Associates. That's a lobbying firm based in Annapolis. They've been longtime friends and partners of the MACPA and the CPA profession. And Nick's going to give us a little bit of an overview of the session that just ended, some of his insights about what's to come. So Nick, welcome. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time. I guess my first question for you, Nick, just really what sticks out for you as you look back on this past General Assembly session, things that we ought to be paying attention to?
Great, thanks, Bill. Glad to be participating with you today. I think one of the things that sticks out is how we operated again this year. We started off that everything was virtual, and then part of the way through session, the Senate opened up, the House remained closed. So it was an interesting time because down here, a lot of the issues that come before us, you need to be in front of legislators, and the one-to-one contact is very important. So we had to navigate that scenario. But I guess the most surprising thing this year was the surplus that we had, the amount of money that the legislature was looking at. We started with a surplus of over $6 billion, and then it grew to over $7.5 billion, which, you know, Maryland's never had that before. The legislature really, in a typical session, if a fiscal note's, let's say, over $200,000, good luck trying to get anything passed. Here it was, how are we going to spend all the money and make everybody happy? And so that was a very surprising, something we've never faced before. And it could look to be the same, not as much, but there is projected to be a surplus next year also. And typically in an election year, a lot of bills, which we are in now, don't get passed. But there were some issues that, as family leave, climate change, that did get passed, that usually don't in an election year. But that's what I would say is the most thing that's stuck out to me was just the amount of money that we had. So taxes were off the table, everything that would impact business generally, for the worst, weren't even discussed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm curious, Nick, you know, everything that I've been reading, that we've been hearing at the MACPA about this past session being kind of, I mean, not so much really impactful legislation that we were seeing because it's an election year, right? And I'm curious what you think about what we might be seeing next year as a result of what's going to be happening in November and beyond.
That's a good question. I think it's still going to be a lot of, well, let's start with this. We are going to be facing and I've been down here since 1991, and it's going to be the first time where we have a new governor, a new comptroller, a new attorney general. We have a recently appointed treasurer back in January. So we have a whole new group coming in. So it's hard to tell what's going to be on top of the agenda. We also are going to have 2 new House committee chairmen. We're going to have at least 1 Senate chairman, new chairman. So with another healthy surplus staring us down, the good news is that we shouldn't see any increase in taxes. But I just don't know what the key issues are going to be, depending on, you know, who wins some of those key seats.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to follow. And I mean, you know, this next slide here just kind of looks at the agenda that we had laid out going into session, and there were really only 2 issues that we spent a lot of time on, both of which passed: the amendments to the sales tax on digital downloads and streaming services, and that establishing the legal division with the Office of the Comptroller and the private letter ruling process, both of which were important to the profession. I'm kind of curious, 3 really important issues that our profession is always on high alert for, right? Sales taxes on professional services, comparative fault, and then more recently, efforts to remove kind of licensing requirements. I'm curious what your thoughts are about the probability that we might might see some versions of those next year, or maybe not. Just your thoughts on that.
Okay. And this isn't, I don't say this to say that it won't happen, and also to make sure that people have to get involved, even though it might not be a threat. I would be surprised if sales tax on services, knowing that we're going to have another major surplus, will be, the threat of that passing, I think, is slim. It's not to say that the bill will not be introduced. And if the bill is introduced, sometimes they put in bills knowing they're not going to pass just to see where the opposition might come from. So we have to be ready for it. But as far as passing, I don't think that will happen. Contributory negligence, I think that depends on who is elected governor, whether the governor, whoever's elected, makes it one of their priorities. As the slide was shown a little while ago, the trial bar is very influential here in Maryland and very active. I'm not sure they would push for it in the first year, but they might. It all depends on who wins some of the key seats in the legislature. And as far as from a licensing standpoint, I'm not sure what that is, and if anything like that, you might need to explain to me what more that issue is, because I don't see them passing anything dealing with licensing unless we're supportive of it. The association has done a great job being influential down here, and we have some key relationships. So if it's something that would negatively impact the profession, I think we would be able to hold it back.
Yeah, that's good news. And you mentioned earlier some of the turnover that we've been seeing in the General Assembly. Here you see three folks that have announced retirements recently. There have been a lot of changes in terms of leadership. And then the elections, obviously, coming up, gubernatorial candidates, just a huge slew there, comptroller candidates. I mean, the elections are going to be a huge deal here in Maryland. I'm kind of curious. First of all, let's talk about turnover, the impact of lawmakers who have retired or left office. How does that impact our profession, our members? What should we kind of be aware of as we see these seats kind of turn over in the legislature?
Right. Right now, as some of the slides you have shown, there are 7 senators that are not returning by choice. They're retiring. And as of now, there are 26 or 27 delegates that are not. Most of these have been tenured down here for a long period of time. We've had great relationships with them. They have grown with us. So as far as the impact, it's going to be a learning process for the newer ones that get elected. There are also some delegates that are running against some Senate incumbents. So there will definitely be more turnover. And I think anytime that you have this amount of turnover, the educational experience or knowing the history of issues really come into play. So you'll have individuals that are looking to come in to change the world, right? They want to have all these new policies, and they don't know the history of why some things are the way they are, which some are good and some are bad. But it's going to take a lot of education. And don't forget, we have relatively a new speaker and a new Senate president. We had the longest serving Senate president in the United States, Mike Miller. And then we had the longest serving Speaker of the House in Maryland under Mike Bush. And they both have passed away. And this was only the second year of the new speaker and the new Senate presidents. So they're still feeling their way. And now you're going to have a total new legislature. Probably one of the greatest turnovers we've seen in a long time. In addition to, like we stated earlier, of all the, the governor, the attorney general, the treasurer, the comptroller. So there's going to be, I think the first year, there are going to be a lot of people feeling their way around, but it's also a great time to build relationships and educate people on whatever the issues are and the profession as a whole.
And that just speaks to the importance of the work that our volunteer members do, right? Getting down there and forging those relationships and educating these new folks to the legislature about the work that they're doing and how it might impact not only our profession, but our business, our clients and the business environment in Maryland as a whole.
Right. Well, and I would say, sorry to interrupt, but I would say where the PAC is very important, and just as important is the relationships. So I remember when we first started, we didn't even have a grassroots program, and now we have one of the best, I think. And every legislator or individual should have a CPA. So whether hopefully they're part of the association, but it would be good to know how many people have those relationships with the individuals, because as you said, there's 3,000 pieces of legislation that come through this legislature, and there's no way that the individual legislator can read all 3,000 bills. Some do, and I can count on the hand which ones do. Besides that, they need expertise. They reach out to their constituents. They reach out to us, the lobbyists, and to the profession to get educated on what the issues mean and how they might impact their constituency back home.
Yeah. Really briefly, Nick, I'm curious your thoughts. We're going to be electing a new governor and a new comptroller this year. What's the impact of those two things happening in the same year, especially for our profession?
And add to that the treasurer, because they make up the governor, the comptroller, and the treasurer make up the Board of Public Works. They're all contracts, procurement, a lot of budgetary decisions go before that board. So that's very important. And the comptroller, as you know, is the licensing entity for the profession. And it's whoever becomes the new comptroller hasn't been in that position before. It's been one that hasn't had a large amount of turnover. There's only been 3. You had Louis Goldstein, you had Schaefer, and now you have Comptroller Franchise moving on to run for governor. So you're going to have someone in there that's, not experienced running a state comptroller division. So anyone that regulates you, licenses you, is very important to the profession. So it's going to, the June primaries in June. So the candidates will get whittled down to one Democrat and one Republican. And then, as soon as the election's over, it's going to be important to get in front of those, whoever wins, and let them know who we are and what we do. Saying that, if anyone has relationships with those candidates that are running, it's, again, good to reach out with them and build the relationship, because you never know who's going to win. So,
yeah. One word that's been kind of front and center through all this has been redistricting. Really briefly, I'm just kind of curious, what kind of impact do you think, if any, will that debate have on legislative work going forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure from a legislative side. It's, well, there's 2, right? There's the congressional that the judge basically declined, and then they went back and passed a new one, which passed unanimously. That's truly not, in my opinion, not going to change the makeup of the federal seats. We're still going to be 7-1. And then from the legislative side, the state senators and delegates, that map went through. Even though the governor vetoed it, the legislature overrode it. So there might be one or two cases where some incumbents are running against each other. But from our standpoint, overall, I don't think the impact's going to be that great. I know in a couple districts, for instance, there's, let's say, three incumbent Democrats that they've been redistricted. So instead of having 3 from the district, now they're going to have 2. But those cases are slim. So overall, I don't think it's going to have much impact on the outcome of the elections.
Gotcha. One last thought, Nick. The best way that our members can have a positive impact on what happens in Annapolis in terms of our profession. What are your thoughts there?
Well, there's a couple things. Definitely, I think they should participate in the CPA day that you have here in Annapolis. Second would be to reach out to, if you have any relationship with elected officials, you should definitely know who your state senator and delegates are. You'd be surprised at how many people don't know that, and you should know that because they need you more most of the time than you need them, especially in an election year where they need votes. A simple handwritten note to anyone who's running for elected office, or if they call you for contributions, make sure you give them your point of view, who you are, what you do, what firm you work for, what company you work for, or if you're sole proprietor, to let them know that. Because at the end of the day, you want them reaching out to you when there's an issue before them as to what impact it might have on your business. In addition, becoming a member of the PAC, because elections are getting more expensive by the day, and if any type of contribution that is made is looked upon as positive from the elected officials, it's crazy to me because a lot of people are hesitant to contact their elected official or get involved. However, by a simple push of a red button or a green button, they could severely impact your profession and your business. So, they need you. As I said, I'll emphasize that they need you, especially in this election year. And then the CPA Association has many programs and grassroots that get the individual CPAs involved. So I would follow the programs that you have, and but definitely know who your state senator is and who your delegates are, and that's easily accomplished by just typing in your district and they'll pop up.
Great tips, great insights, Nick Manis. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Great stuff there from Nick Manis. Look back at the General Assembly session and what might be happening going forward. Right now, let's take a kind of a wider look at state regulatory and legislative issues as a whole that we need to watch. And here to help us do that, James Cox. He's the Associate Director, State Regulatory and Legislative Affairs with the AICPA. James, thanks so much for being here. Again, appreciate your time as well. And I'm going to turn it over to you. So
great.
Take it away.
Bill, happy if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Love to chat. First off, thank you to the MACPA for the invite. As Bill mentioned, my name is James Cox. I'm the Associate Director of State Legislative and Regulatory Affairs. My team at the AICPA, our main focus is tracking legislation focused on the CPA license. And we also monitor states and jurisdictions for any issue that could have a negative or positive impact on the profession. This year nationally, we saw 4 unique trends. And just as a quick caveat, there are still a number of states and jurisdictions in legislative session. So we are kind of at the halfway point, but these are the biggest trends that we've seen since January. Really deep focus on occupational licensing, and I'll do a quick deep dive into each of these topic areas, but just at a high level, occupational licensing, the taxation of professional services, a perennial issue for the CPA profession. Most recently and very interesting, state responses to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We've seen a flurry of activity in that space. And then to a large extent, state policymakers are really trying to grapple with understanding digital assets, how that plays in financial systems. So we have a lot of really interesting issues that we're monitoring. Next slide, please. And next one. So I wanted to kind of highlight the 4 types of occupational licensing bills that we are monitoring kind of nationally. Just to give you some perspective, the number of bills have increased since 2015. So we really saw this as a reaction to the Supreme Court decision in the North Carolina dental case versus the FTC. So of the 311 or so bills that we're monitoring this year, the bills fall into generally 4 categories. What is dubbed universal licensing. And for the CPA profession, which adopted mobility 20 plus years ago, the concept of universal licensing is very similar. So, if a licensee is licensed in Pennsylvania and their trade, a state might adopt a universal licensing system to allow that individual to come into Maryland and practice their trade. The challenge with universal licensing bills is that they do not contemplate existing systems of mobility. So for instance, CPA mobility, architects have mobility to a certain extent, engineers, and as well as existing healthcare compacts. So these bills don't contemplate that when they're written. It's a silver bullet approach to licensing. And as someone who deals with licensing day in and day out, it is quite the puzzle that you have to put together and contemplate each aspect of a licensing system. The other aspect or the other issue that we're looking at and seeing this year is a continuation of an effort at the state level to expedite licensure for members of the military, military spouses, and for the most part, states have adopted some type of expedited licensure for those individuals. The challenge here again is our position is existing systems of mobility should be contemplated when these bills are drafted. And to date, most states have acknowledged those systems when these laws have been adopted. The third topic is what we've dubbed regulatory review. A number of states have adopted systems where regulations must be, one, reviewed during certain times or at a certain threshold, or if a new regulation is adopted, it has to meet a certain standard of protecting the public, the health, safety, and welfare of those in the state. An interesting issue that I think we've seen more of this year than any other type of bill concerns criminal convictions, and licensure. So when an individual goes to obtain a license, we're seeing state legislatures think about removing a good moral character requirement for licensure in kind of a broad spectrum of professions. There is also a large effort at the state level to, when a candidate applies for licensure, the thought is they shouldn't have to wait until the end of the process to find out they don't get a license. So states are implementing procedures that a candidate for licensure can obtain a pre-certification, if you will, prior to going down the road for full licensure. So those are the 4 types that we're seeing predominantly this year. Next slide, Bill. I wanted to kind of give you a picture of the number of states that are looking at this issue. It's generally like this every year. There are some states that have more onerous onerous bills that pop up. And I wanted to highlight a few of those for you. I mentioned universal licensing. West Virginia pursued that this year for the 2nd year in a row, and it was defeated. Louisiana also has they have around 5 universal licensing bills. One was deferred in committee this morning. And, again, these bills are seeking to provide a silver bullet to cross-border practice, but they don't contemplate the existing systems. One of the most onerous bills that we saw this year was in Wisconsin, my neighbor to the north. There was a bill to require any examination for licensure or any change to an examination for licensure to be approved by the legislature. So, as you all are aware, the CPA exam is going through an evolution at this point. A new exam will be launched in 2024. So in that context, the legislature would have to approve the new CPA exam for use in Wisconsin through a piece of legislation. There was some challenging language in the bill in that it didn't define what a change to an examination would be. So could it be a different question on an exam given at a different date? Could it be a slight change or wording? There was no guidance given as to what a change would be. That bill has been deferred until next year. Interestingly, it was the CPA who sponsored that bill. Next slide, please. It's okay, I'll jump in. So, I mentioned we track this legislation nationally, but how is the profession responding? In 2017, AICPA and a number of other groups, including the architects, the engineers, came together in a coalition to really educate nationally state policy groups, work with state societies to educate lawmakers in their states, to really understand and share that knowledge of how the CPA profession is regulated, what the impact of these bills are on an existing system of cross-border practice, and I think more importantly, making the distinction between an occupation and a profession. As I mentioned, bills typically group every regulated occupation and profession under the same lens. And our hope was to really make that distinction to policymakers and help them understand that there are differences between a florist, which is licensed in Louisiana, and a CPA also licensed in Louisiana. The needs of each occupation and profession are unique, and those needs should be acknowledged when a bill is drafted. Next slide, Bill. So I mentioned that my team and I focus primarily on the CPA license in the state. And as part of that focus is to promote the adoption of key UAA priorities. Next slide. Those priorities include CPA firm mobility. So that concept is if a firm is licensed in one jurisdiction, they meet certain requirements, including peer review and a simple majority firm ownership structure. They could practice in another jurisdiction as that firm without the need to register with the State Board of Accountancy, thus eliminating compliance issues or challenges with licensing in that other jurisdiction. Currently, 31 jurisdictions have adopted CPA firm mobility. Alaska did so this legislative session. That bill is pending transmission to the governor for signing. Also, South Carolina is, I think their legislation is it was a House bill on the Senate side. So that is moving through the process in South Carolina as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned that the UAA concepts that we're promoting really do contemplate a seamless system of cross-border practice for CPAs. And so one of those issues is CPE reciprocity. So you may be asking yourself, why do other states need to acknowledge or accept the CPE from an individual's home state? Many states require a CPA to register in their state depending on the type of engagement being performed. So in the Midwest, there are a number of states that require a CPA to obtain licensure in that state if they're performing a grain elevator audit. Or if in some states where gambling is prevalent, they may require a CPA to obtain licensure in that state. So regardless of mobility, there are unique features in state laws that do require a CPA to register in those jurisdictions. Because of that, a CPA, because they're maintaining multiple licenses, and there are folks who would like to maintain their home state license if they retire in Florida. So for that individual who has multiple licenses, they would only need to comply or to obtain the CPE requirements in their home state jurisdiction, and those would be accepted in the other jurisdictions in which they're licensed and accepted with the board. Currently, 37 jurisdictions have adopted CPE reciprocity, and as of last week, the Louisiana Board of Accountancy is currently considering adopting the concept. Next slide, Bill. The final concept is the adoption of the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. AICPA and NASPA adopted that change in the model or UAA model rules. And again, its purpose is to really kind of create an easier cross-border practice for CPAs. This year, Pennsylvania has legislation to adopt the code in their statute. Next slide, Bill. So tax issues. Nick mentioned tax on services a little earlier, and it is an issue that we at the national level have seen every year for the past decade. Some years it ebbs, some years it flows, and moving forward, we do expect this to become a big issue at the state level. This year, we had 3 states consider a tax on services: Alaska, Kentucky, and Oregon. Oregon was slightly unique in that it would have allowed a municipality to levy that tax. The 3 states in green are the 3 that currently tax professional services, including those provided by CPAs and CPA firms. The states in purple, we've begun looking at tax on services through the lens of state budgets, and states with high pension issues. So the states that you see in purple we are predicting some level of activity within the next 3 years on this issue. So again, it's not going away. You know, I'm glad it was discussed earlier. We really do encourage advocates to work with their society on this issue. Next slide, please. Other profession issues. You know, and this is, I think, the fun part of my role at AICPA, are the issues that really don't deal with licensing, that are kind of out of the ordinary and interesting, that pop up out of nowhere. Over the past 3 months, the state level response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine has really been tremendous, I think is a good word. We've just seen a high number of states respond through both legislation and through executive orders dealing with assets, Russian level assets, state investment in those assets, consultants working in some type of capacity connection to Russia. And there are a number of states that have considered the 71 bills and executive orders focused on Russia have been kind of thought about over the past 3 months. And that's a really, really high number when you look at it so quickly. Digital assets, you know, as I mentioned, states really are trying to understand what, you know, still after so many years, trying to figure out what the blockchain is, what crypto is, you know, how they can adopt a regulatory environment to allow for an individual to pay taxes in crypto, or a business to accept in their state to adopt crypto. So it's a really interesting policy area where they're focusing. 37 states and Puerto Rico have some level of digital asset legislation this year. I mentioned the 2 examples about paying your taxes and being able to, a private entity being able to accept digital assets. Those bills were in California and Louisiana. Finally, cannabis. 37 jurisdictions have some form of legalization, be it adult use or medicinal. This year, we saw Mississippi adopt a medical marijuana legalization bill. It's an issue that we will continue to monitor. There are clear implications when a regulatory scheme is established for cannabis. The bills are written in such a way requiring some type of engagement from a licensed CPA. So there are implications there. And of course, it is still illegal at the federal level. Next slide. You know, Bill, I'm glad you and Nick kind of chatted about the political environment in Maryland this year, because it really is the same in other states. A number of states still don't have, voting maps. Some do, some are being challenged. So, you know, that's currently where we are looking at the November elections, is that some states don't have maps yet. When they will have them, TBD. But it is a really big year at the state level in terms of the political environment. Elections, state level elections in 36 states. For governorships, the party makeup there is, you know, 22 Democrats, 28 Republicans, what that looks like after November. So it is a really interesting kind of time there for governor's elections as well as legislative seats. I mean, it is really fascinating to me that 56% of all Senate seats in the country are up and 92 House seats are up. I mean, that's a really big change. And, Nick mentioned the need to, because of that change, the need for engagement following an election is really high and really important, especially for a profession such as the CPA profession, because it is so highly technical. And I think, Nick, I loved when he mentioned that there were 1,000+ bills being considered and no one has time to understand them. It's very similar to the CPA profession. It is challenging for policymakers to often contemplate what goes into the CPA license, what CPAs do, what issues impact the profession. So I think it is really important, especially after a large change that is coming in November, to really engage in the advocacy process. Bill, I'll go ahead and just stop there and answer any questions.
James, thanks. And Rebecca, Mary Beth, are there any questions? I know we're coming up close on time there, but any kind of pressing questions that you think might be good to kind of toss out there?
I think we were able to answer all of the ones in the chat or in the conferences IO. So I think we are good.
That's great. Well, James, really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here. Your insights were invaluable, and it's going to be an interesting year to say the least. So thanks again for being here. All of you, I guess the marching orders are stay vigilant, right? Donate to that PAC. If you've got those relationships in Annapolis, let us know so that we can continue to make a difference on your behalf and on behalf of the profession. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, I'm sorry.
Nick, I have one quick thing.
Yeah.
There are some CPAs that are thinking about maybe getting into politics. We're fortunate that we have some in the legislature. For instance, Brian Feldman, who is vice chairman of finance, is a very good advocate for us in the legislature. And any CPA that might be looking to get into the politics or run for office, it would be great if they would. So I just wanted to put a special shout out to those that are in the legislature, and especially Senator Feldman, as you know, has been a great friend of ours over the history of the legislature. So
yeah,
I just wanted to put that in, and that's all I have.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Nick. Thank you for that. Yeah, Senator Feldman has been a great friend of the profession. There are some other CPAs there in the legislature. And of course, if anybody out there listening has political aspirations, we would love to hear from you and figure out how we can help you take those next steps. So folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more. Have a great afternoon.